They're two women who know every word they say will be picked apart. The Duchess of Cornwall and Carrie Johnson coming together to take a stand against violence. Camilla using the opportunity to deliver the most powerful speech of her royal life.
In one moment that took the nation by surprise, Queen Camilla found herself at the center of an unexpected scene that no one could have predicted. Everyone knows the Queen Consort's journey into the royal house.
Buckingham Palace has just announced that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has died. She was 96 years old.
Has not been without its challenges, but even with public scrutiny, the recent loss of her beloved dog, her husband's ill health, and her heart condition, she has consistently maintained a graceful and composed presence in public. Well, that was all until recently, during a live TV broadcast, when her calm demeanor suddenly gave way to an emotional outburst that left the royal watchers wondering, what could have triggered such a surprising reaction from her? You're about to find out, so stay with us. Queen Camilla's recent outburst on live TV. In recent months, the British royal family has been rocked by a series of crises, from King Charles battling a severe form of cancer that has left him too weak to fulfill his royal duties.
Buckingham Palace, which has announced that the King has been diagnosed with cancer.
To the ongoing feud between the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Sussex. But somehow, Queen Camilla has managed to give the public more things to talk about with her recent emotional breakdown on her recently released documentary, Behind Closed Doors. The documentary, which focused on a cause Queen Camilla has long championed, took an unexpected turn when the heartbreaking story of Joanna Simpson was shared. If you are easily deeply moved by tragedies, this is your cue to brace yourself as you're about to hear one of the most gut-wrenching accounts in the history of domestic maltreatment. During the documentary, Diana Parks courageously recounted the story of her daughter, Joanna Simpson, whose life was stolen in a violent, unimaginable way. According to Diana, Joanna was everything a mother could wish for: beautiful, loving, and full of life. A devoted mother to two young children, Joanna was adored by everyone who knew her, but behind her vibrant smile, she was living in constant fear, trapped in a relationship that grew darker by the day. Joanna had married Robert Brown, and at first it seemed like a fairy tale. But as time passed, the relationship turned toxic. Robert became controlling, isolating her from friends and family, until Joanna found herself alone, desperate to escape the hold he had on her life.
13 years since Joanna Simpson was brutally killed by her husband. Robert Brown attacked the 46-year-old with a claw hammer as their two young children were inside the house.
But no matter how hard she tried to fight back, the walls kept closing in. After years of enduring constant infidelity accusations and violent threats from her estranged husband, Joanna knew she had to leave. So in January 2007, she sought legal advice on how to break free from him. But even that didn't help the situation, because later the next month, after moving to Hong Kong, Joanna received a scary call from Robert, who told her how he fantasized about killing her and their children with an axe, and then committing suicide by crashing a plane. Diana recalled the terror in her daughter's voice when she reported the threat. Sadly, typical of abusers, the threat didn't stop there because days later, upon Joanna's return to the house, Robert threatened her again, but this time with a knife to her chest. This renewed Joanna's resolve to escape the grip of a marriage that had become a nightmare. She was hopeful that the law would finally protect her, that she could breathe freely once more. Diana described how overjoyed she was when Joanna shared the news of a legal precedent that might limit Robert's financial claims in their divorce. The excitement was palpable. Eventually, the divorce proceedings were finalized, and for the first time in years, Joanna was genuinely happy. Sadly, this joy was short-lived, and the future that Joanna had so eagerly hoped for was tragically stolen before she could experience it. On the day of her death, Joanna was alone at home, waiting for Robert to return their children after a week-long visit. In Diana's words, normally, Joanna would never have been alone during such exchanges, considering how violent he can be. But for some reason that day, she was. After the children entered the house, an argument began. At first, it seemed like the usual exchanges they used to have while still married, but in the blink of an eye, it escalated into something horrifying. It was in that heated exchange that Robert, in a move that seemed premeditated and well-calculated, pulled a claw hammer from nowhere and struck Joanna 14 times in the presence of their youngest child.
Robert Brown, who bludgeoned his ex-wife, Joanna Simpson, to death with a claw hammer.
After confirming her dead, he callously placed her lifeless body in the trunk of his car, went inside the house to remove the CCTV unit, and told the children to get into the car. From there, he drove them to his pregnant girlfriend's house, then turned off his mobile phone and finally disposed of Joanna's body in a remote area of Windsor Great Park, where he had already prepared a shallow grave. As Diana recounted her daughter's brutal and heartbreaking final moments, Queen Camilla sat in stunned silence. At first, she tried to hold herself together and could even be seen struggling really hard to stifle the sobs that were building within her by taking deep breaths. But when the full weight of Joanna's story finally hit, she could no longer hold back. That was when broke down in tears. Away from the cameras and the headlines, the Queen has long been an advocate for domestic maltreatment victims, and her dedication has manifested in many forms, especially through her support of the independence campaign called Brick by Brick Initiative. Just a month before the documentary's release, she had made a generous private donation of £300,000 to the Brick by Brick Initiative.
Queen Camilla is also a huge advocate, and in a new documentary on ITV tonight, we'll see the work she does behind the scenes.
The heartbreaking reality is that oftentimes, many victims remain in abusive situations because they have no safe place to go. It is this realization that inspired Dame Joanna Lumley, CEO of the Independent Foundation, to launch the Brick by Brick initiative with the goal of creating safe havens for women, children, and even pets fleeing the horrors of abusive homes, a space where healing can take its full course and where they can be given a new chance at life. For Joanna Lumley, this was simply an opportunity to raise funds for the helpless. Little did she know, however, that she had just presented a powerful platform because soon after its launch, survivors began stepping forward to share their truths. Among them was Esther, who was held hostage by her abuser for an entire week, Emma Armstrong, whose partner threatened her with revenge by sharing explicit images, and even BBC star Victoria Derbyshire, who revealed the heartbreaking story of how her father's abuse shattered her mother's life and how she became a victim of maltreatment. But that's not all. Earlier this year, as part of her efforts to witness the unfiltered impact of domestic maltreatment, Queen Camilla visited a refuge service in Lambeth, where she met and listened to survivors recount their harrowing experiences. This visit built on her earlier work as the patron of Safe Lives, a UK charity dedicated to ending domestic abuse. Moreover, in Manchester, the Queen helped launch an exhibition titled I Am, Portraits of Survivors of Domestic Abuse, which showcased photographs of individuals who have endured and overcome abuse. Even during the COVID-19 lockdown, when cases of domestic maltreatment had reached a dangerous high, Queen Camilla personally sent out messages of support to victims just to remind them that they're not alone, definitely not forgotten, and that help was on the way. For the Queen, this is not just a movement, but a lifelong commitment. But here's the catch. If we focus solely on Queen Camilla's advocacy against domestic maltreatment, we risk missing the bigger picture, which is her commitment to gender equality. Queen Camilla's advocacy for gender equality. For starters, it is quite impressive to see a member of the royal household at the forefront of a topic that was termed a taboo years ago. While her work in combating abuse is undeniably important, it's part of a broader mission to challenge the systemic inequalities that women face every day. For the Queen, tackling domestic maltreatment is inseparable from the fight for women's rights and opportunities. At a recent event at Buckingham Palace, Queen Camilla delivered a heartfelt speech about the urgent issue of maltreatment against women. The gathering, attended by 300 guests, included notable figures such as Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, Home Secretary Suella Braverman, and former Spice Girl Melanie Brown. The occasion was part of the United Nations 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Maltreatment.
The Queen Consort has hosted a women's-only reception at Buckingham Palace to raise awareness of violence against women. It's taken place during the UN's annual 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence.
An initiative aimed at raising awareness and inspiring action to end maltreatment against women and girls. In her speech, Queen Camilla described maltreatment against women as a global pandemic and highlighted shocking statistics to show the scale of the problem. She revealed during the 16 Days of Activism that yearly, more than 2,000 women worldwide lose their lives to maltreatment from a partner or family member, with over 3,000 women during the same time in England and Wales alone. These figures, she said, show how urgent it is for everyone to come together to fight this crisis. The meeting took an emotional twist when the Queen Consort also shared powerful stories from women who had survived domestic abuse, emphasizing the importance of listening to their experiences. She told the story of one woman who had escaped an abusive relationship and is now helping others overcome similar challenges. This, Queen Camilla said, is a powerful reminder of how survivors can inspire change and create hope for the future. Toward the end of her speech, Queen Camilla paid tribute to women who have lost their lives to maltreatment. She urged the audience to remember their names and stories, reminding everyone that behind every statistic is a real person whose life was tragically cut short. Her speech was a passionate call for action, a tribute to victims, and a powerful reminder of the need to end maltreatment against women once and for all. Queen Camilla's partnership with the Changemakers. During the meeting, which was captured in an unreleased clip, the Queen expressed her strong commitment to advocating for change. She shared how her granddaughters, who are around the same age as the Changemakers, had suggested the idea of pop-up shops in schools. These informal spaces would allow students to discuss sensitive topics like abuse in a relaxed, judgment-free environment. This approach resonated with not just the Queen, but all the Changemakers who were present. The conversation didn't end there. The Changemakers also shared their recent visit to Parliament, where they met with Education Secretary Gillian Keegan to push for changes to the national curriculum. One of the Changemakers, Maya, explained that part of their mission is to help young people feel less isolated and more empowered. She said that taking their campaign to Parliament was a crucial step in raising awareness and making sure the voices of young people are heard. Ellen Miller, the chief executive of Safe Lives, who was also present at the meeting, highlighted the findings from their research, which showed that young people are often let down by the systems meant to support them. She pointed out that children and young people want more from their relationships and education classes, but too often they are overlooked by professionals and misunderstood by the adults around them. Miller emphasized that domestic abuse services rarely reflect the needs of young people, leaving them without the support they desperately need. Together, Queen Camilla and the Changemakers are championing a movement that will empower the next generation to live free from abuse, and we can't wait to see how it all unfolds. A powerful tool for spreading information about places like North Korea, where news is hard to come by. The woman's story became a rallying cry for many who wanted to highlight the plight of marginalized groups within the country, particularly the disabled, who are often left behind by the government. In response to the confrontation, Kim Jong-un's government wasted no time in cracking down on any potential dissent. Reports emerged that surveillance and security were ramped up, with citizens who had ties to disability advocacy groups being quietly questioned by state security forces. The regime was clearly trying to prevent any similar acts of defiance from happening.
Amid the complex connections between countries, the lack of official friendships between nations emerges as a vital piece shaping how the world works. When there's no proper way for governments to talk and find solutions, it's like a gap waiting to be filled with understanding and teamwork. Without diplomatic ties, countries miss opportunities to sort out their problems, work together, and calm things down. This gap shows how important diplomacy is for stopping fights and improving things. Countries left alone without friends show us how not talking can cause big problems. Throughout history, there have been many cases where not having official diplomatic connections has caused long-lasting fights and problems that affect the whole world. Take the United States and Iran, for example. Their not-so-friendly relationship has lasted a long time and caused them to miss chances to make up. This not talking has made them not trust each other and has caused a lot of trouble in the Middle East. This situation is a clear picture of how not fixing problems through diplomacy can lead to bigger problems, like not working together against terrorism and making tensions worse in a whole region. Nowhere is the impact of not having proper diplomatic friendships clearer than in North Korea's case. This country has chosen to stay away from others, and that's not just about keeping its people from knowing what's happening outside. It's also about not getting along with other countries and causing human rights problems that nobody stops. Not having friendly talks has even pushed them to try and get powerful weapons, making East Asia less stable. Also, how India and Pakistan have stayed distant from each other causes problems in their part of the world. They're not working together on things they share, which can even lead to fights that put peace and stability at risk. These stories tell us how urgently we need countries to talk to each other and make the world more peaceful. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Israel are no strangers to this phenomenon. They share no official diplomatic relations and largely maintain a hostile stance towards each other due to regional political dynamics and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You need to know that since Israel became independent in 1948, Saudi Arabia has not accepted its existence due to their ongoing conflict. Saudi Arabia has consistently supported the Palestinian side and opposed Israel in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Israel are also partners in maintaining an intriguing relationship devoid of official diplomatic connections. Despite the occasional waltz of high-level meetings and negotiations, both pairs tread lightly without exchanging official embassies, formal agreements, or the usual channels countries typically use to manage their political, economic, and cultural interactions. It's a diplomatic tango that highlights how complicated global relationships can be. In a world where partnerships and loyalties don't always follow the usual rules, these countries show how intricate international connections can get. Let's discuss the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict started in the late 1800s. In 1947, the United Nations made Resolution 181 to split the land of British Mandate Palestine into areas for Arabs and Jews. This led to the birth of Israel on May 14, 1948, and a big fight between Israel and Arab countries called the First Arab-Israeli War. Israel won in 1949, leading to 750,000 Palestinians leaving their homes. The land was divided into Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. Fast forward to 1987, many Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip protested against the Israeli government. This event is known as the First Intifada. In 1993, the Oslo I Accord attempted to bring peace by letting Palestinians govern parts of the West Bank and Gaza, and both sides acknowledged each other. 1995 Oslo II built on that, making Israel withdraw from specific places. By 2000, the Second Intifada erupted because of various factors including tensions over the West Bank. It lasted till 2005. Israel reacted by building a wall in 2002, despite international objections. During the summer of 2014, clashes in Palestinian areas led to a big fight between the Israeli military and Hamas, a Palestinian group in Gaza founded in 1987. It's a political and militant organization involved in conflicts with Israel and governing Gaza. In 2014, Hamas shot around 3,000 rockets at Israel, and Israel responded with a strong attack on Gaza. The fighting stopped in late August with a ceasefire deal helped by Egypt, but sadly 73 Israelis and 2,251 Palestinians lost their lives. After a series of clashes between Israelis and Palestinians in 2015, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas stated that they wouldn't follow the territorial divisions from the Oslo Accords anymore. Between March and May 2018, there were weekly demonstrations by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip along the border with Israel. The last protest marked the 70th anniversary of the Nakba, the Palestinian displacement during Israeli independence. Although many protesters were peaceful, a group breached the perimeter fence and threw rocks and objects. The United Nations reported 183 demonstrators killed and over 6,000 injured due to live ammunition. In 2022, Israelis and Palestinians have had the highest number of conflict-related deaths since 2015. The violence has kept increasing in 2023, especially in the West Bank, heading towards its worst year for deaths since 2005 due to frequent Israeli invasions. Palestinians and Israeli settlers have fought multiple times, and the situation might get worse as Israel gave the green light for 5,000 new settler homes in June 2023. There's a concern that a third intifada may erupt, potentially leading to heightened and widespread turmoil. Here's a surprising turn. While Saudi Arabia and Israel's connection differs, the United States has maintained a robust and intimate bond with Israel since its founding in 1948. This alliance is forged through mutual democratic principles, cultural affinities, and strategic advantages in the Middle East. The US provides upwards of $3.8 billion in military aid to Israel annually. Support for Israel has remained strong and bipartisan. Yet even with this, strong partnership disagreements arise, particularly regarding Israeli settlements and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Remember that in January 2020, during the Trump administration, a Peace to Prosperity plan was introduced. However, Palestinians didn't accept it because it favored Israel taking over settlements in the West Bank and having full control of a united Jerusalem. How did Saudi Arabia get caught up in all of this? As one of the founding members of the Arab League, Saudi Arabia has been a vocal supporter of Palestinian rights, advocating for their independence. The country has consistently urged Israel to withdraw from the West Bank and other lands it occupied after 1967. In 1947, Saudi Arabia stood among a group of Middle Eastern nations that opposed the United Nations partition plan for Palestine. Saudi troops were sent to fight against Israel in the 1948 and 1973 wars. Here is how the fights unfolded. Following Israel's declaration of independence on May 14, 1948, the conflict heated up as Arab forces joined Palestinian Arabs in attacking land in the former Palestinian Mandate. Right before May 14th, the Arabs attacked Tel Aviv from the air and the Israelis fought back. After that, armies from countries like Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Egypt invaded the former Palestinian area. Saudi Arabia also sent its troops fighting alongside the Egyptians. British-trained forces from Transjordan entered the conflict, but limited their involvement to areas specified as part of the Arab state, according to the United Nations partition plan, including the special status region of Jerusalem. After some intense initial battles, Israeli forces, now under a joint command, switched to an offensive stance. A six-day war also occurred in 1967, where Israel took control of Arab territories like the Sinai Peninsula and the Golan Heights. With these, you would agree that there were several years of occasional conflicts. This made Anwar Sadat, who became Egypt's president after the War of Attrition 1969-70, tried to make peace by proposing that Israel give back the captured lands in line with United Nations Resolution 242. However, Israel said no, and the fighting escalated into a big war in 1973. This war was known as the October War, or the Fourth Arab-Israeli War. However, in the realm of helping the Palestinian people, Saudi Arabia takes a leading role. Since 2002, they've generously provided more than $480 million to the Palestinian Authority, showcasing their significant financial support. Moreover, Saudi Arabia has also assisted Palestinian refugees by contributing to the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA. Saudi Arabia has shown strong financial backing for the Palestinian cause, contributing over $250 million. Their commitment extended even further, with a pledge of $500 million in aid for the upcoming 3 years, announced at the Donors Conference in December 2007. what sets their assistance apart is its resilience. Unlike the aid from other nations, Saudi Arabia's support for Palestinians remained unwavering even after the election of Hamas. Now, let us dive into what might be the most astonishing news in history. Saudi Arabia and Israel have embarked on an extraordinary journey toward establishing an official relationship. It's truly hard to believe, but what could be the reason for this great alliance? The reason behind this alignment might be that Saudi Arabia and Israel have a common enemy, which is Iran. Both Saudi Arabia and Israel worry about Iran's actions in the region. Similar to how the United States helped Israel make peace agreements with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco in 2020, it's currently attempting to facilitate discussions between Israel and Saudi Arabia to establish official diplomatic relations. Israeli President Isaac Herzog has praised the United States for working to help Israel and Saudi Arabia become formal friends. He believes that if they establish a normal relationship, it could bring significant positive changes. In his Wednesday speech, Herzog said, "Israel thanks the United States for working towards establishing peaceful relations between Israel and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, a leading nation in the region and in the Muslim world. We pray for this moment to come." This would be a huge sea change in the course of history in the Middle East and the world at large. Herzog's comments show that Israel views becoming friends with Saudi Arabia as a valuable achievement on a global scale. The current US President Joe Biden is working to make this happen to support the conservative government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia has once again stated that it won't form a connection with Israel until Israel achieves a peace deal with the Palestinians, who still live under Israeli rule. The Saudi embassy spokesperson in Washington, Fahad Nazar, mentioned that Israel has great possibilities for positive changes through normalization, such as trade and cultural interactions. Still, for Saudi Arabia to move forward in the direction of friendship, the main issue of conflict with the Palestinians must first be resolved. There's news that Saudi Arabia is discussing the possibility of direct harsh flights with Israel, making it easier for Palestinian citizens of Israel and even those from the occupied territories to go for the annual pilgrimage. Palestinians often have to take detours through countries like Jordan because of restrictions on their travel imposed by Israel. This potential change could save them time and effort. Israel is keen to establish ties with Saudi Arabia. This is especially notable as Saudi Arabia has recently repaired its relations with historical rival Iran and the Syrian government, with both developments occurring this year due to a deal brokered by China. Although Israel and Saudi Arabia haven't officially been friends, they both worry about Iran's actions in the region. Also, according to various American media sources, Saudi Arabia is seeking benefits from the US if it officially acknowledges Israel. One of these benefits includes formal security assurances from Washington. For this reason, Saudi Arabia has taken steps to distance itself from the conflict, adopting a more amicable stance and fostering a friendlier approach. They've secretly worked together a bit because of these shared concerns, even though they haven't become official buddies. So, while they're not exactly best friends, they've shown signs of getting closer. However, Saudi Arabia hasn't altered its stance favoring the Arab Peace Initiative. This initiative connects the recognition of Israel with creating a Palestinian state and resolving issues fairly concerning Palestinian refugees. Still, Saudi officials haven't completely dismissed the idea of a potential agreement with Israel. In the past, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman mentioned that they saw Israel as a possible ally. He also highlighted the importance of Israel addressing its issues with the Palestinians, who've been noticeably absent from the normalization efforts. In the bigger picture, the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia have distinct dynamics and goals. This has resulted in an intricate network of connections in the Middle East, often influenced by challenges in regional security, economic benefits, and diplomatic decisions. Who would have thought that Saudi Arabian officials would be sitting down with the Israeli counterparts? The emerging alliance between Saudi Arabia and Israel marks a noteworthy development in a region known for intricate relationships and historical complexities. This evolving partnership is a reflection of shared interests and changing diplomatic dynamics. As this new chapter unfolds, the world watches closely to see how this alliance might shape the future of the Middle East. We've come to the end of this video. What do you think about this new alliance? What could this mean for the wider Middle East? Will other nations follow suit? Let us know what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.